Most people treat rejection like a rare disease to be avoided at all costs. But successful people treat it like medicine to be taken daily. They know that every no strengthens their immune system against future disappointment and builds their tolerance for the massive rejections that come with massive goals. While you're tiptoeing through life trying not to disturb anyone or ask for too much, champions are out there getting rejected by bigger people for bigger opportunities because they understand the mathematical truth. You cannot succeed without failing first. The person who fears rejection will never ask their boss for a raise, never start their own business, never approach their ideal romantic partner, never apply for their dream job. They will live their entire lives wondering what if, while the people who embrace rejection are living their dreams. Your rejection phobia isn't keeping you safe, it's keeping you stuck in a prison of your own making. Rejection is the single most powerful force that separates achievers from dreamers. Every person who has ever built something meaningful, every individual who has ever climbed from ordinary to extraordinary has one thing in common. They have been told no more times than they can count. They have faced doors slammed in their faces, emails that never got responses, and conversations that ended with polite dismissals. Yet they stand today as proof that rejection is not your enemy. It is your teacher, your trainer, and your ticket to greatness. Most people live their entire lives running from rejection like it's a disease. They craft their days around avoiding the possibility of hearing no. They choose safe jobs, safe relationships, safe dreams. They build walls so high around their comfort zones that nothing can get in to hurt them. But here's what they don't realize. Those same walls that keep rejection out also keep success locked away on the other side. The fear of rejection has become an epidemic in our society. Studies show that people fear rejection more than death itself. Think about that for a moment. We would rather stop breathing than face the possibility of someone saying no to us. This fear runs so deep that it controls every major decision we make. We don't apply for that better job because they might reject us. We don't start that business because customers might not buy. We don't ask for that promotion because our boss might say no. We don't approach that person we're attracted to because they might not be interested. This fear creates what psychologists call a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you expect rejection, you behave in ways that actually invite it. Your voice becomes uncertain, your posture shrinks, your presentation lacks confidence. You unconsciously communicate that you don't believe in what you're offering, so why should anyone else? The very thing you're trying to avoid becomes the thing you create. But successful people have learned a fundamental truth that changes everything. Rejection is not a judgment about your worth as a human being. It's simply information. When someone says no to your proposal, they're not rejecting you personally. They're providing data about timing, fit, circumstances, or approach. Nothing more, nothing less. Thomas Edison understood this better than anyone. When reporters asked him about his 10,000 failed attempts to create the light bulb, he replied that he had not failed 10,000 times. He had successfully found 10,000 ways that didn't work. Each rejection, each failure, each no was simply information that moved him closer to the solution. Edison treated rejection as research, not personal assault. This shift in thinking is absolutely critical to your success. When you stop taking rejection personally and start seeing it as valuable feedback, everything changes. You begin to welcome it instead of fearing it. You start seeking it out instead of hiding from it. You understand that every no is moving you mathematically closer to your yes. The people who achieve extraordinary results in life have developed what I call rejection immunity. They have trained themselves to hear no without emotional reaction. They process it, learn from it, and move forward immediately. They don't spend hours analyzing what went wrong or days recovering from the emotional blow. They accept the rejection instantly and channel that energy into their next attempt. Here's the paradox that most people never grasp. The harder you fight against rejection, the more power it has over you. When you resist it, argue with it, or let it devastate you emotionally. You give it control over your actions and your future. But when you accept it immediately and completely, it loses all power to hurt you. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean you stop trying or lower your standards. It means you acknowledge reality without emotional drama. You hear no and think, okay, what's next? Instead of why me, you treat rejection like weather. You don't take a rainstorm personally. You don't argue with thunder. You simply adjust your plans and keep moving forward. The most successful salespeople in the world understand this principle better than anyone. They know that sales is a numbers game. They know that for every 10 prospects they approach, 8 might say no, 1 might say maybe, and 1 will say yes. They don't celebrate the rejections, but they don't fear them either. They see each no as progress toward their goal, because it brings them mathematically closer to their next yes. Professional athletes demonstrate this mindset perfectly. A baseball player who gets a hit 3 times out of 10 at bats is considered excellent. That means they fail 7 times out of 10. Yet they step into that batter's box with complete confidence every single time. They have learned to separate their performance from their identity. A strikeout doesn't make them a failure as a person. It's just data about that particular pitch, that particular moment, that particular attempt. The moment you truly accept rejection as part of the process rather than a personal attack, your entire relationship with risk changes. You become willing to take bigger chances because you know that even if you're rejected, you'll survive and learn. You start making more attempts because you're not afraid of the outcome. You begin to see rejection not as your enemy, but as your guide, pointing you toward better strategies, better timing, and better opportunities. This is where your transformation begins, not when you learn to avoid rejection, but when you learn to accept it completely. Not when you become immune to hearing no, but when you become indifferent to its emotional impact. The path to everything you want in life runs directly through the valley of rejection. The question is not whether you'll be rejected. The question is whether you'll let that rejection stop you or strengthen you. Your brain is working against you every time you face the possibility of rejection. This is not your fault. It's how you were designed to survive. Understanding this biological reality is the first step to overcoming it and transforming your relationship with rejection forever. When someone rejects you, your brain interprets this as a threat to your survival deep in your ancient programming. Rejection from the tribe meant death. Cast out from the group, you would face the wilderness alone, without protection, without resources, without hope. Your ancestors who felt the pain of rejection most intensely were the ones who fought hardest to stay connected to the group. They were the ones who survived to pass on their genes to you. This primitive survival mechanism still operates in your brain today. When your boss says no to your proposal, when a customer refuses your offer, when someone declines your invitation, your brain sounds the same alarm that would have gone off 50,000 years ago when you were banished from the tribe. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, stress hormones flood your system, your thinking becomes clouded. You enter what scientists call the fight or flight response. But here's the critical difference between you and your ancestors. You are not actually in physical danger when someone rejects your idea. Your survival does not depend on any single person's approval. Yet your brain doesn't know this. It reacts as if your life is at stake, which is why rejection feels so devastating, even when logic tells you it shouldn't matter. The champion's mindset begins with a fundamental shift in how you interpret rejection. Instead of asking, why me, you train yourself to ask, what's next? Instead of seeing rejection as evidence that something is wrong with you, you see it as information about what needs to change in your approach. This shift doesn't happen overnight. But with practice, it becomes automatic. Champions understand that rejection is often redirection in disguise. When one door closes, it forces you to find another path. And that other path is frequently better than the original one you were pursuing. the job rejection that leads you to start your own business, the relationship rejection that opens you up to finding your true partner, the investment rejection that pushes you to find a better opportunity. Building emotional resilience is like building physical muscle. You don't become strong by avoiding heavy weights. You become strong by lifting them repeatedly until what once seemed impossible becomes routine. Every rejection you face and handle properly makes you stronger for the next one. Every no you accept gracefully increases your capacity to handle bigger rejections in the future. This is where the 3-second rule becomes your most powerful tool. The moment you hear rejection, you have 3 seconds before your emotional brain takes control. In those 3 seconds, you can choose your response. You can either let the primitive part of your brain hijack your emotions, or you can take conscious control and respond like a professional. Here's exactly what to do. The instant you hear no, take a deep breath and count to 3. During those 3 seconds, remind yourself that this rejection is not about you as a person. It's simply information about this particular situation at this particular moment. Then respond with grace and professionalism. Thank them for their time. Ask if there's anything you could do differently in the future. Maintain your composure and dignity. Jennifer learned this lesson the hard way. She was selling insurance and taking every rejection personally. After 3 months of poor results, she was ready to quit. Her sales manager taught her the 3-second rule. The next time a prospect said no, instead of feeling crushed, she paused, breathed, and asked what it would take to earn their business in the future. That single question led to her biggest sale of the year 6 months later. The rejection wasn't the end of the relationship, it was the beginning. The most successful people in every field have learned to neutralize the emotional charge of rejection by treating it as business, never personal. They separate their sense of worth from their temporary outcomes. When a professional athlete strikes out, they don't question their value as a human being. They analyze what went wrong with their swing and prepare for the next at-bat. You must develop this same separation between your performance and your identity. Your worth as a person is not determined by how many people say yes to you today. Your value is not measured by your most recent success or failure. You are not your results. You are the person who creates results, learns from them, and creates better results tomorrow. This psychological shift is the foundation of everything else you will learn about handling rejection. Until you understand that rejection is a programmed response that you can override with conscious choice, you will remain at the mercy of other people's decisions. But once you master your internal response to external rejection, you become unstoppable. You develop what champions have always possessed, the ability to be rejected and keep going anyway. Now that you understand the psychology behind rejection, it's time to build a systematic approach that transforms every no into progress toward your goals. This is not about positive thinking or pretending rejection doesn't hurt. This is about creating a professional response system that automatically moves you forward regardless of the outcome. The 5-step acceptance protocol is your blueprint for handling any rejection with maximum effectiveness and minimum emotional damage. These 5 steps will become second nature with practice, turning you into someone who actually benefits from being told no. Step 1 is acknowledge without judgment. The moment you receive rejection, you immediately acknowledge it as factual information without adding any emotional interpretation. You don't label it as good or bad, fair or unfair, expected or surprising. You simply recognize that this person, at this time, under these circumstances, has said no, period. No drama, no analysis, no emotional reaction, just acknowledgement. Step 2 is extract the lesson immediately. Before you leave that conversation, before you hang up that phone, before you close that email, you identify what this rejection teaches you. Is it about your timing, your approach, your presentation, your pricing, your target market? Every rejection contains valuable intelligence about how to improve your next attempt. Your job is to mine that intelligence while it's fresh. Step 3 is adjust your approach based on the lesson you just extracted. you immediately modify something about your strategy. If they said no because of price, you adjust your pricing or your value proposition. If they said no because of timing, you adjust your follow-up schedule. If they said no because they didn't understand your offer, you adjust your presentation. The key word here is immediately. Don't wait, don't overthink, make the adjustment right now. Step 4 is plan your next move. While you're still in that conversation or immediately afterward, you decide on your specific next action. When will you follow up? Who will you approach next? What will you do differently? Your next move should be concrete, specific, and scheduled. Vague plans lead to no action. Specific plans lead to results. Step 5 is take action within 24 hours. This is perhaps the most critical step of all. Within 1 day of being rejected, you must take your planned next action. This prevents rejection from creating momentum in the wrong direction. Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, you immediately create forward momentum toward what's going right. Robert. An entrepreneur seeking funding for his startup experienced the power of this system firsthand when his first investor said no. He followed the protocol exactly. He acknowledged the rejection without taking it personally. He extracted the lesson that his financial projections were too optimistic. He adjusted his business plan to include more conservative numbers. He planned to approach 3 more investors that week within 24 hours. He had sent his revised proposal to the next prospect on his list. 6 weeks later, that investor said yes. But the protocol is only as good as your ability to learn from rejection data. Every no tells you something valuable about your market, your message, or your method. When multiple people reject you for the same reason, that's not bad luck, that's market research. When everyone loves your product but nobody buys it, that tells you something about your pricing or your sales process. When people are enthusiastic in person but never follow through, that tells you something about your follow-up system. The key is to look for patterns rather than individual incidents. One rejection tells you about one person's situation. 10 rejections with similar reasons tell you about your approach. When you start seeing patterns, you know exactly what needs to change. This brings us to the difference between quality persistence and stubborn repetition. Stubborn repetition is doing the same thing over and over while expecting different results. Quality persistence is consistently working toward your goal while continuously improving your methods. The unsuccessful person makes the same pitch to 100 people and wonders why they keep getting rejected. The successful person improves their pitch with each rejection until they develop an approach that consistently works. You must learn to distinguish between when to pivot and when to persist. If you're getting rejected because people don't want what you're offering, you need to pivot to a different product or service. If you're getting rejected because of how you're presenting what you're offering, you need to persist with better presentation skills. The difference is crucial to your success. Building rejection immunity requires daily practice. You cannot develop this skill by avoiding rejection or hoping it won't happen. You develop it by deliberately seeking out situations where rejection is possible and practicing your response system. Make requests that might get turned down. Ask for things that stretch your comfort zone. Apply for opportunities that seem just beyond your reach. Each time you practice handling rejection professionally, you build your immunity to its emotional impact. You prove to yourself that rejection is not dangerous, that you can survive it, and that you can even benefit from it. This practice makes you bolder in your future attempts because you know that even if you're rejected, you'll be perfectly fine. The most successful people in the world play the numbers game with complete confidence. They know that success is a mathematical certainty if they make enough quality attempts. They track their ratios and improve their methods, but they never let individual rejections discourage them from continuing their efforts. They understand that every no moves them closer to their next yes, and that understanding makes them absolutely unstoppable. Here's the truth that will change your life forever. Rejection is not your enemy. It is your greatest advantage. Every person who has achieved extraordinary success has one secret weapon that average people lack. They have been rejected more times, in more ways, by more people than anyone else. This is not in spite of their success. The rejection advantage begins with understanding that being told no builds character in ways that being told yes never can. When everything comes easily, you remain weak. When you face resistance, you develop strength. When you encounter rejection, you discover what you're really made of. You learn to rely on yourself rather than the approval of others. You develop the inner certainty that comes only from knowing you can handle whatever life throws at you. Every rejection shapes you into a stronger leader. It teaches you resilience that cannot be learned from books. It builds confidence that cannot be shaken by future setbacks. It creates wisdom that can only come from experience. The person who has never been rejected lacks the depth of character required for significant achievement. They crumble at the first sign of serious resistance because they have never learned to handle disappointment. Think about the most successful person you know personally. Ask them about their history with rejection, and you will discover a pattern. They have failed more times than most people have even tried. They have been told no more often than average people have asked. They have faced more closed doors, more unreturned calls, more polite dismissals than anyone else in their field. This is not coincidence. This is the price of admission to extraordinary achievement. The character building that comes from rejection prepares you for the bigger opportunities that await you. Success at high levels requires the ability to handle enormous pressure, devastating setbacks, and constant criticism. If you cannot handle being rejected for small things, how will you handle the massive challenges that come with massive success? Rejection is your training ground for the championship fights of your career. Colonel Sanders understood this better than most. He was rejected by over 1,000 restaurants before finding someone willing to use his chicken recipe. 1,009 rejections. Most people quit after 5. Some exceptionally persistent people might continue after 50. But 1,009, that level of persistence only comes from someone who truly understands that rejection is not personal failure, but necessary preparation. At age 62, when most people are thinking about retirement, Colonel Sanders was just getting started. Every no he received was simply information about where not to go next. Every rejection was research that brought him closer to the right partner. When he finally found that partner, KFC became one of the most successful restaurant franchises in history. Those 1,009 rejections didn't prevent his success, they created it. Michael, a real estate agent in competitive market, made rejection his specialty. In a different way, instead of avoiding difficult clients and challenging properties, he actively sought them out. He became the agent that other agents called when they had impossible situations. He specialized in properties that had been rejected by multiple buyers and sellers who had been turned down by other agents. While his competitors fought over easy deals, Michael built his reputation on solving problems that everyone else avoided. The clients who had been rejected elsewhere became his most loyal customers. The properties that seemed impossible to sell became his most profitable transactions. By embracing what others rejected, he created a business that nobody could compete with. The publishing industry is filled with similar stories. Some of the world's best-selling books were rejected dozens or even hundreds of times before finding a publisher. Stephen King's first novel was rejected 30 times. J.K. Rowling was rejected by 12 publishers before someone said yes to Harry Potter. Dr. Seuss was rejected by 27 publishers. These authors didn't become successful despite being rejected. They became successful because they kept going after being rejected. Each rejection taught them something valuable. It forced them to examine their work more critically. It made them consider different markets and different approaches. It built their determination and clarified their vision. By the time they found their yes, they had a much better product and a much stronger belief in its value. Now it's time to create your own rejection action plan. This is not a theoretical exercise. This is your practical blueprint for turning rejection into your competitive advantage. First, You must set rejection goals. Most people set goals for how many times they want to succeed. You need to set goals for how many times you're willing to be rejected while pursuing that success. If you want to make 10 sales this month, decide that you're willing to be rejected 50 times to get them. If you want to find your ideal job, commit to applying for 20 positions even if the first 19 say no. If you want to find the right business partner, prepare to meet with 50 potential candidates even if 49 turn you down. When you set rejection goals, you remove the emotional sting from individual rejections because each one brings you closer to your target. Track and measure your progress like a scientist. Keep a rejection journal. Record what you asked for, who you asked, when you asked, and why they said no. Look for patterns that reveal opportunities for improvement. Celebrate your rejections as much as your acceptances because they represent courage in action. Build systems that automate your response to rejection. Create standard follow-up procedures. Develop scripts for handling common objections. Prepare contingency plans for different types of rejection. When you have systems in place, you don't have to think about what to do next. You just follow your predetermined process and keep moving forward. The final truth about acceptance is this: rejection is not the opposite of success. It is the pathway to success. It is the toll you pay for admission to achievement. It is the price of playing at the highest levels of life. Every successful person has paid this price many times over. They didn't find a way around rejection. They found a way through it. Your next yes is waiting on the other side of acceptance. It's waiting behind the next no you're going to receive. It's hiding in the shadows of the rejection you're currently avoiding. The only way to reach it is to walk directly through the valley of rejection with your head held high and your determination intact. Stop trying to avoid rejection. Start seeking it out. Stop fearing it. Start using it. Start letting it defeat you. Start letting it develop you. The person you will become through handling rejection properly is worth far more than anything you might have gained by avoiding it. Your moment is now. Your opportunity is here. Your success is waiting. But first, you must be willing to be rejected. You must be willing to hear no as many times as it takes to earn your yes. You must accept rejection not as your enemy, but as your teacher, your trainer, and your pathway to everything you have ever wanted. The choice is yours. You can spend your life avoiding rejection and wondering what might have been, or you can embrace rejection, learn from it, and use it to build the extraordinary life that is waiting for you on the other side of fear. What will you choose? The safe path that leads to regret, or the challenging path that leads to greatness? Your future is determined not by how many times you avoid rejection, but by how many times you accept it and keep going anyway. The time for excuses is over. The time for action is now. Go out there and get rejected. It's the fastest way to get everything you want.